Well, this is my 1949 Studebaker 2R5 half-ton pickup truck that my sister and I are in the process of restoring. And today what I wanted to talk about was my steering column, how I took it apart, what I did to get it ready to put back in, and just cover some basic things that you may need to know about it. This is a T12 steering column for my pickup. You can find its type by looking at this side housing plate on the steering gearbox. Here it says T12 5998. This steering column assembly has what they call a shaft, which goes up, and that's what the steering wheel connects to. You see up there at the top, that big nut there, that's what you use to bolt down the steering wheel. It also has this steering shaft post jacket which goes over this, and it mounts to here on the steering gearbox, and then at the very top that steering column slash shaft rotates inside of there on a bearing at the very top there. I've already packed that bearing and got it ready to put back on there. To take this apart, what the book says to do is to remove this pitman arm. This pitman arm is connected to the camshaft lever, and if you do remove the pitman arm, make sure you mark where it was on this camshaft, because in a second you'll see why that's important and how it will affect your ability to steer the truck itself. I'm not taking the camshaft lever off. I didn't notice any significant leaking, so I just cleaned everything up, and I'm going to remount it and see if it holds the oil. This mounts to the frame of your pickup. There's 4 mounting points. 2 of them have these studs. The importance of these studs are they're 3/8 studs, and what goes into the steering gear housing is the coarse thread, but most importantly this goes all the way into the steering gearbox. So if you remove the stud and if you tilt this over, oil will come spilling out of there. So just kind of keep that in mind. For the steering gearbox itself, you have the side housing cover, and it has a fill plug here, and this is what we call a camshaft adjusting screw and a camshaft adjusting screw locking nut. I'll talk more about this once I get this cover off, but it's held on there with these 4 bolts. They're a 5/16 bolt coarse thread. I'll go ahead and take those off. So there's the cover, there's the fill plug itself, and this is the camshaft adjusting screw, and that's where it turns on the inside there. And where that comes into play is right here on this camshaft. Now this camshaft has some movement, it can move in and out. Okay, and so when you get it all put back together, you're going to adjust this movement here. You're going to try to minimize this movement as best as you can by turning this screw in or out to minimize the play there. The book talks about it, does a pretty good job of it. When I get ready to put it in there, hopefully I can capture that. The other thing I want you to look at is as I lift this up, on the top of this camshaft there's a couple of teeth that go into the gears found at the end of the steering column shaft. That's why it's very important that you mark this pitman arm, how it went on this camshaft lever here, because if you don't, when you go to put it back together, you're going to have issues trying to get your steering system to turn like it needs to. So keep that in mind when you get ready to take that apart. But for me, I'm leaving that on. To remove this steering shaft slash post, you need to take off this top cover. It's held by 3 bolts. They're a 5/16 coarse thread bolt too. So once you get them all off, if you pop that off of there, you're going to probably find some shims in there. And I got a series of shims, And these are there to ensure that this top cover doesn't put too much pressure on these bearings that are found on the end of the steering shaft here. There's a set of bearings here, and there's another set of bearings down here that the shaft rotates on. And what these shims do is they go over, these shims go over this bearing carrier right here. That's where the bearings are. So I'll go ahead and just pull that out real quick. Lift up the camshaft lever, and that'll allow you to pull that out. So there's the bearings. You can see the bearings on both ends there. They're held in with these retainer clips on both sides. And that's what actually goes into here, and this turns. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have this top cover pinching this bearing and putting it in a bind. And so that's what these shims do. They help to make sure that this top cover doesn't push down too far on this bearing there. So don't lose those shims, and hopefully you won't need to add any more. When you look at this tube right here is actually where your horn wire is fed through the steering column, through the steering gearbox, and out the bottom here. Make sure that that's cleaned out and there's no old dirt daubers, nests or anything in there. So that's kind of it in a nutshell with the steering column assembly for my pickup truck. We'll go ahead and I'll just put it together right quick. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and insert the steering shaft back into there. So it's into there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and line up my shims. I'm just going to snug those down right now, but I will tighten them. But when I do get them tightened, I'm going to spin this shaft and make sure there's no bind on it. Because if there is a bind, I'm going to have to loosen it up, maybe try to find another shim to go in there to keep it from binding down on those bearings. So just kind of keep that in mind. And you can see how this camshaft lever turns. There's a prescribed place for this fitment arm that it lines up with your vehicle and turning left and turning right. If you get this off, you're going to have problems with your steering. So again, if you take this off, make sure you mark where it was on the shaft there. We'll go ahead and put this cover back on. This is the side cover. There is a gasket that goes on there that I've already made. I just went and cut one out. Okay, once I get these tied down, again, you got this cam lever adjusting screw here that you're going to need to adjust for the free play and the camshaft lever here. And the book says you need to have this on the vehicle, you need to have the wheels off the ground when you make this adjustment for both the vertical and horizontal free play in your steering column assembly here. So just kind of keep that in mind. Don't get that, make sure that's loosened up before you put this back on there, and then you can adjust that once you get it on the vehicle. This is your plug to fill it up, and I plan on using 80-90 weight oil for that. The last thing I want to talk about is this top cover right here. As you can see, there is this gap between this top cover and the steering shaft here. And if you look at the parts book, it talks about a seal that is found up into here. Well, based on what I've looked at for parts and researched for these older type vehicles, for steering shafts going into steering gearboxes, I'm pretty sure that this was a felt seal. And so I looked around on the internet and found some possible seals, but heck, they wanted like $3-4 for them, but they wanted like $15 to ship it to you. So what I did was fabricate the felt oil seal, and I've got another video out there that shows you how I went about doing that. And now that we got that felt seal in there, what we can do now is we can go ahead and slide our steering post jacket over this, and then it will be ready to mount into the pickup. Hopefully this will help somebody else out there. Thank you very much, and bye.